I think we are live.
All right. Let's see. Yeah.
Um,
I don't think there's any mic feedback on this one. That's great. That's great.
all right. So, everyone, Stephen Hilliard, a BigCommerce Dev Advocate, and I'm here with Scott Williams, the Chief Innovation Office of Heating Marketing. We're going to be talking about the topic of discussion, which is how your hackathon ideas can lead to idea and innovation to go to market and make successful just by participating in hackathons. So, first thing kind of want to ask was this like your first hackathon or just like the first hackathon in mind with something to improve on the platform?
Yeah, it was actually my first official hackathon. I've kind of played around with things, done little side projects and things within groups, but never an official hackathon. So it's my first one ever.
All right, that's cool. So like when with your journey of development, I mean, last year about this time when we talked, you're talking about like the troubleshooting tips and everything like that, and but I wonder if you'd want to walk us through it again, like what was your developer journey of coming up with an idea and seeing it to where it is now, and like any sort of challenges you ran into, first time hackathon that you're like, just I guess advice that you give out to anyone who else was starting out.
Yeah. So having worked with e-commerce merchants for 12 years or so at this point, more actually, I've got this long list of ideas, challenges that they face, things that I'd like to solve. And you know how it goes. You don't always have the time that you want and don't always do those things. And so when the hackathon came up, it's really just thinking about pain points that merchants have and some of those things that I would love to solve for and take a stab at. And so, one of those pain points that I heard over the years, over and over and over again, was just how complicated, how time consuming, how expensive it was to build custom features, things that often were expected to be standard or things that are best practices, especially from a marketing perspective, that you see on Amazon, you see on Target, you see on this and that. But for the average merchant, it can be more inaccessible. And so I had this in the back of my mind. And so I thought, hey, how can I attempt to solve this? How can I do this natively on the BigCommerce platform? And that's where the idea of leveraging widgets that can be used with no code inside of Page Builder came to mind. And so, yeah, I thought I'd tackle that one in the hackathon. In terms of challenges, gosh, a number of them. My app building background has largely been with a LAMP stack. So I'm very comfortable with PHP and MySQL and just really know the stack very well and know how I build things like this. But in this case, I thought, well, it's a hackathon. Not only should I attempt to solve a problem, but it's a good opportunity for me to learn and test something new. And so while I definitely knew React and had worked with Next.js, I hadn't built an app with it at all. And so it was a good opportunity just to try and build something full stack on an entirely different architecture. And so I attempted to take on that project. And so I think that was one of the biggest challenges, was just trying to rethink how I would want to build this in an entirely new architecture. So that there is definitely a significant challenge. Always the time crunch as well, trying to go from nothing to idea, to fleshing out that concept. How do I want to solve this problem? To then thinking around the app framework, as well as then the app itself, the actual function of it, and get all that done in 10 days was a significant challenge, especially when you factor in that it's not like I took 2 weeks off of my day job. And so this was a lot of, squeezing it in here and there, a lot of nights, definitely worked over the weekend and a lot of late nights, and did everything I could to make it happen. So I think that's always a challenge with any hackathon, is going to be, unless you're in a dedicated space for 48 hours with no sleep. So I think that was a big one. And then just really trying to think through not just how would I solve this problem, but already thinking ahead to what would make this the most useful to the user. And so leveraging page builder and widgets I had done before, but not in this kind of way, especially not to be consumed by the masses. And so really thinking through challenges like UI, how do I make this intuitive for someone to design and configure a widget for various different use cases? And you can imagine a scenario over here and a different scenario over there. So how do you make that work in a cohesive way, especially for non-technical people, but then potentially also developers and agencies that are more technical? And so how do you bring some of these concepts? How do you think through like a mobile breakpoint and having something like that as a field in a widget? But does people even know what that means? So how do you solve for a problem like this? And what are the right default values then to help people on the way? How do we make so a number of challenges, a lot more for sure. Multi-storefront was another piece to try and really think through and figure out. It was my first multi-storefront app. And so just kind of working through that logic of how do I, what's global and what's storefront specific, and how do I structure the database? How do I structure the app? How do I track the context appropriately across everything? How do I think through that end to end? So that was another significant challenge that I worked through along the way.
Yeah, I mean, and anyone from developers starting out to very experienced developers have definitely faced those challenges when they have an idea that they want to start with, and just coming into a platform wanting to make better. So what you want to do and what you have time to do are two completely different things.
Definitely.
Yeah. When you ran into any of these challenges, did you kind of utilize any of the BigCommerce community support that we have for developers?
Yeah, definitely. One of the challenges with it being a tight time frame is I didn't always know how quickly I could get feedback from people in the right way and in a timely way. And so I think I did ask some questions to the dev relations team that was putting on the hackathon here and there, not for technical solves, but just general context. Did look at, I think I had a couple conversations along the way, like real-time conversations, but one of the biggest things that was helpful was to take a look through some of the different threads in Slack, some of the things that are on the community forums as well. Obviously the developer documentation, to look at where have people solved for similar challenges in the way, where people ask questions, in this case around like widget schema, and what are some of the challenges there? What are the best practices there? How have people overcome different problems along the way, especially where documentation is maybe a little bit thinner. So the community was a great help in that case, and I'm more comfortable giving advice on the community, but in this case, it was helpful to receive some of it.
That's great to hear. And then you submitted your video, your project, and we were all like really blown away by it. And then just like, made the announcement of winning. And I believe the next time, not the next time I talk to you, because we talk on a regular cadence, but like the next time we talked about the app was when I was involved with the automated billing beta.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because you were the biggest external developer who was like, doing the most with the beta, and we were trying to get more developers involved with the beta program. And then when we were getting feedback, you're like, oh, it was the app that I submitted, and I'm enrolling in this beta. Would you describe like the process of going through the beta, and do you find it important for like devs out there, and especially working on our platform, to like really get involved in those processes?
Yeah, definitely. I think where relevant, it's super helpful. So in this case, the beta was the automated billing, which would effectively replace Stripe or whatever other payment provider in the application. And so to have a native payment provider on the platform seemed to reduce a lot of friction. And so as I was thinking about taking this to market, that was a great opportunity. So it was very timely in terms of when that beta really kicked off. And as I was developing the app further post hackathon, where we had the validation, but now we wanted to take it towards launch, wrap it with a much better brand, really build everything out, and then think through things like payments. And so it was very timely. So whether it's a timely and relevant beta, absolutely. And so I think some of the benefits were being surrounded by a community. So there were other devs and apps that participated in the beta. And so just hearing through, how they think about payments and some of the challenges that they faced was helpful, as well as just relationship building. So you kind of form a unique bond in those cases. And so there were a few new agencies and developers that I got to meet in that process. And it really just kind of forces you to think through things a little bit differently and allows you to shape and influence the direction. And so I think in this case, even though that beta still hasn't launched, I think one of the most beneficial pieces of it is that now I've had the opportunity to speak into the way that this gets formed, the way that it will come out when it actually goes GA, which I'm really excited about. And I think that that final requirement set and the build will likely reflect a lot of what I was able to speak into, and certainly others. And it's going to make sense, but that will make it that much more valuable once it's launched, and make it easier for me to adopt it at that point. And so, but what's unique about participating in a beta as well is that it's actually in beta and things are subject to change. And so in this case, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of things to think through, and it was changing along the way and has since. And so, what was unique is just trying to walk through, when do I use it? When do I trust that this is stable and what's going to happen? And so, so we wound up at the end of the day, not waiting for it to go GA and leveraging Stripe in the short term, which was then another interesting challenge of effectively building two payment methods into the same application to try and leave the foundation for the future to transition back. But yeah, it really forces you to think through a lot of things. How do you structure your data? What's the schema of the database? What's the flow that you want users to use? And in this case, uniquely, how would you migrate users from one payment provider to another? Do you migrate them? What does that process look like? Do you entice them towards adoption? So these are all things that I was thinking through in that process that I wouldn't have thought through had I not participated in the beta.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you and the other developers are working in it, we were all in the trenches trying to figure it out. It was, and you guys were like definitely the driving force of change for that beta. So, I mean, hearing that experience is like, can't encourage enough people that might be out there on the platform, starting to develop and want to maybe get involved in the beta program and develop that community to like say, yeah, go for it. You should get into it. Just start coding. But I think what you mentioned, the idea of like future, I guess it's future proofing might be the correct word of like, it was everything was changing. So you have to think these things through for your build. On that note, is there really anything that you're thinking about future proofing for where it is now to into market and to maybe next year?
A lot of things that are on the roadmap for sure, regardless. So in this case, a lot more widgets that are in development and or in the ideation stage, things that we've seen proved out that actually make a difference, but then have to be built and brought to the masses. But in terms of future proofing, certainly there's a few other key things. So laying the foundation for an updated payments option was a key one. Also just thinking through transitions in technology on the BigCommerce side as well, just trying to anticipate where will Page Builder go in the future? How can we best leverage the platform? Thinking about the different APIs that are there and best leveraging the platform wherever possible. So not cheating, not taking shortcuts, not just pulling back and relying on JavaScript, really trying to leverage the platform in the best of ways to set ourselves up well for the future. Some of the other pieces that we thought about for future proofing were things like data layers that I didn't think about initially when I built it for Hackathon, certainly, and even in the early days of the app build is not just how do you get, in this case, widgets onto a page and how do you make that intuitive and user-friendly, how do you make them effective, but how do you make this trackable? was a really interesting challenge that came up towards the end of the app build of, okay, well, especially right now with the recent transition to GA4, of not only to make it trackable, but you also want to think through a totally different way of event-based analytics. And so how do we think through that, but then future-proofing that for further pieces? So exposing data into a data layer that then could be accessed by different tools that might integrate with it and push that into GA4. So we had the benefit of working together with Fuel.io, where they actually integrated into Atomic Widgets and started the process before we even launched, even though it didn't fully come out until a few weeks ago. But so we did launch with one tracking system right away, but then thinking through future proofing, if anyone else wants to integrate into this for similar type reasons, to push into GA4, to push into your own data warehouse, how might that work? What would that be like? So that was just a key one that you would never think about early on in a project of what kind of data do we need? What would we use the data for? Is this for the widgets to consume and leverage to improve the experience? Also to push it into analytics, to push it into a data warehouse. In our case, we're really thinking about not just how do you get this onto the page, but how do you effectively A/B test it? Or how do you look for continuous improvement to understand which ones are being used and where are they being used? And how does that impact the user journey towards conversion? Which ones have the highest impact on conversions, so that then you can, in our case, you have the freedom to flexibly, easily move the widgets, to add new widgets, to change how they look. And so that was another key piece where we're really trying to think ahead and make sure that we leave a foundation there, so we don't have to go back and rewrite significant things that are going to impact current users.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot on your plate. Thinking about everything, all that. I can't. How can you even keep all that organized?
I don't know. I keep a lot of it in my head. Definitely, in this case, tried to start the documentation early for the application for how we're using Page Builder. So a lot of markdown files embedded in repos to track, this is the best practice for, here's how we're going to do this on a widget, and here's how we're going to do that. And then documentation for, here's how we integrate with Stripe, here's how we do this, here's how we do that. And oftentimes documentation is an afterthought, but I tried to make it part of the process this time because as anyone that's built an app or built some custom code for a client before, inherited someone else's code, and you come back later, it can be such a challenge to go and re-engineer and process how did not just someone else build this? How did I build this thing? What was I doing and thinking, and what's the flow? And so trying to get ahead of that certainly was, I think, helpful in this case. I'm sure there's more documentation to put together as well.
Yeah, I believe anyone that's been doing this for a while has all been there, especially with, keeping documentation up to date. I myself have run into past iterations of documentation and just had my files with notes all mixed up. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think everyone has had to deal with at one point or another. But I mean, I think we've kind of hyped up the app, the program a lot. So would you like to demo and give the audience the ability to see it?
Yeah, sure. If I can maybe just give a couple quick parting thoughts in terms of hackathons too, before we transition.
Absolutely.
I think one of the questions we had talked about at some point was, what advice would I have for someone else, to enter a hackathon, and specifically thinking around how do they win a hackathon? And I think the way that I approach it is that you have to look at winning really in two ways. The first way is just aside from winning whatever prizes that are there in the hackathon, what is my goal for the hackathon? What do I want to get out of this? Where do I want to grow within this process? And really thinking through that. And in my mind, for the most part, for a hackathon of this nature, the biggest wins aren't what prizes you're going to get. It's really about how am I going to grow and what do I get to explore and experiment with and test. And so I think I'd always recommend that someone really think through their own personal goals before they step into the hackathon. From there, how do you actually win the hackathon? You got to understand the rules. You got to understand how it's being judged and make sure that you're following those goals and understand like what is those that are going to judge this, what's the rubric that they're going to use to think through this. And I think this is where, for me, it comes back to, I think about this as more than a developer. I think about this as a business owner, as a UX type person as well. And so I'm really thinking through that, like what's going to have the best experience? How do I best meet these requirements and really deliver a more complete package? So not just, hey, here's a snippet of code that may or may not work, but here's an entire package that solves a problem, specifically the problem that's brought up in the hackathon as kind of the prompt for the hackathon. How do I make sure that I solve something that really meets that need? And how do I make it a little bit exciting and maybe not just a small need, but something that's really felt across the ecosystem? And so I've got clients that will often come and try and solve a single problem. Maybe the first person, at least the first person that's come to me of the hundreds and hundreds of stores I've worked with, they're like, hey, solve this. And sometimes as developers, we get that like one little itch or this random idea, but the reality is that maybe no one really wants some of these things. And that's where testing early comes in helpful if you're just doing a general software development process. In a hackathon process, I think you at least want to just do that quick little bits of validation and really thinking through what would actually resonate here. And so that's certainly, what I went back to in this case was, what do I know is a felt need in the marketplace? What do I think that the judges from BigCommerce would really see as a valuable tool to add into their ecosystem? And so, in this case, it's going to benefit merchants, it's going to benefit BigCommerce, it's going to benefit agencies, it's going to benefit developers. And so I knew that there would be a lot of excitement around this particular solution. And so I think that was very helpful along the way. And then I just did a couple little, maybe cheat codes too, just thinking through, just a placeholder logo for this and, just a little bit of extra work on the UI of the app instead of just having it be entirely functional, thinking through the UI of the app enough where I thought, well, what would be an intuitive experience for someone? And then the UI of the widgets themselves, as I mentioned earlier. So I think those kind of things help to like package it much better. And so my take, at least, I think some of those pieces are particularly helpful. And then the actual video or submission of it as well. And I know there were some great videos from that one. And I think that a lot of people did an amazing job. So I'm honored to be in first place. But I think some of what I tried to do in the video wasn't just to show off the tech, but was to show the solution to a much bigger problem. And I think that's something that people should definitely walk away with.
Yeah, I 100% agree. When we have people that, submit things that are like, this is the problem I see, that's only going to not only help, the platform, but it's going to help anyone that uses the platform, people to build on the platform and everything. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, with that in mind, I'd love to show off what was originally the summer 2022 hackathon project and winner that then we wrapped with a brand called Atomic Widgets and fleshed out further and have now launched in the marketplace. Let me share my screen here.
Sorry to the folks that are watching this. We're working with very limited Wi-Fi capability right now.
Once you get that pulled up, I'll be happy to share.
I've been booted out a couple of times with the platform, so hopefully I guess I do have to. Well, technical difficulties, folks.
The life of a developer, always a technical challenge. I don't think I have the ability to switch the screen.
Unfortunately, I'm kind of frozen in here trying to get
While you pull up the screen share, then while you're waiting for Wi-Fi connection, I can share a little bit more about really the why behind Atomic Widgets.
Yeah.
So kind of like I mentioned earlier, the goal was to solve challenges that merchants had come to me with over the years. And so, like I said, oftentimes, they would come back with this problem that they want to solve, and then I would scope it out and it'd be like, hey, it's this big of a project. And so they'd really think through the cost of it, the elapsed time of it, the challenges of getting it all built out. And that's often a turnoff. And even now, as an agency where I have a full team behind me to support everything, when a client comes to us, or when one of our marketing strategists comes and says, hey, we would like to add this feature to a website, it can often take a lot longer than we would desire. And so, you go through, well, what's the strategy behind this? And then you go from the strategy to the wireframe, and the wireframe to the copy, or maybe hand in hand a little bit. And then you go from there to a mock-up, and then you go from the mock-up to dev, and then you build it out from a dev perspective. And these are often unique challenges that you're solving. So there's a little bit to figure out there. And then you go from dev to QA, and then you finally need to deploy. Meanwhile, all along the way, you have QA every step and maybe client approvals. And so something that can seem relatively straightforward can often take weeks or even months to actually go from concept to deployment. And so even as a marketing agency that has all of the resources to do this, we often find ourselves in this place where we want to work much faster on behalf of our clients. And so the idea here was, how do we bring best practice conversion and marketing techniques to all users, kind of democratizing this experience where you see these great features that some of these carts have, or these stores have, that have spent millions of dollars on their sites, or hundreds of thousands of dollars on their sites. And but others want that as well. And we know that it can make an impact on their stores. And so, we might want to create urgency. We might want to try and increase the average order value. We might want to try and improve the conversion rates. We might want to surface information and educate our users. We might just need some basic building blocks for our store. And so the idea was, how can we bring this to all users in a quick and reliable way? So we went from a process taking maybe 6 different people in the most complex scenarios to really just needing one person, and where it might take up to, say, 8 weeks or something, again, depending on the complexity and approvals along the way. Now something can be deployed in a matter of minutes. And so Atomic Widgets then is a suite of widgets. There's about 20 of them right now. We have more in the works, as I mentioned earlier. And the hope is to really just bring this to people to quickly and easily, with no code necessary, be able to deploy these things to their storefronts.
From when I watched the demo that you did, it was amazing. So here we go. I believe I got it to work. Hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll in business.
So inside of your traditional BigCommerce dashboard here, this is just one of my sandboxes. We just make this nice and easy. So you go to edit your theme just like you would anyone else. I suppose I could actually show the app. Let me just jump into the app real quick. See if the Wi-Fi is strong enough to handle this.
Oh yeah. Ooh. If not, we'll leave it on a cliffhanger, and this might be a 2-parter.
So let's try this. All right, here we go. So here's just the quick UI of the app that we've built out. So nothing terribly special here, just some traditional dashboard type things. And then really this is where all the magic happens if this will finish loading. And so what we do is we surface a suite of various widgets. We make them all available. As I mentioned earlier, you can filter based on, what category that you want to do. So suppose I want to look at things that are going to create urgency. Here I can filter for the low stock alert. If I want upsells, then I can display these ones, right? And really think through what I want. And it's really straightforward in terms of if you want to add one of these to your store, all you got to do is toggle this button on here, and now that scrolling logo bar is waiting in my storefront. So we just try and make it really easy for you along the way, and then all the magic really is happening then inside of Page Builder. So let me just open up Page Builder real quick and show how easy it is to use this.
To the folks at home, we look like we're still, but I finally got a good signal, so I feel like if I move, it'll change things.
Just watch this on 1.7x here. Let's see if this will load.
The technical difficulties of things. Well, while we're waiting for that to load, I could get in. I think my closing question that I was going to ask in regards to hackathons is, we currently have another one coming up. If you got any plans for what's coming next?
Yeah, I haven't read all the details and requirements for the hackathon, but someone hit me up within an hour of it being announced. Yeah, it sounds like a really exciting one, working with AI and Google and some of that. Those are, interestingly enough, I worked with some of the earlier APIs that Google had put out around AI, sentiment analysis, different things a number of years ago, and it was a lot of fun. So excited about this hackathon and trying to carve out time to put an entry in to compete. And again, the point, like, how can I stretch my skills again in this case? And so as AI is something that I think about every day in my role as a chief innovation officer, where I'm really responsible for innovation across our agency and for all the ways that it can benefit our clients. So AI has been something that we've been talking about all year. So I'm excited to then explore from an API perspective, just how I can push some of that further.
Awesome. I can't wait to see, what is submitted with that hackathon. And I mean, I wish I could join you guys and working with some of that stuff. I mean, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway.
All right. So Atomic widgets. So you can see I've got all these new widgets over here on the sidebar, and then all the regions on my homepage. I've already hidden the hero, but if I wanted to say highlight a product on my storefront, all I got to do is drag this over here. And here, out of the box, I have a section that really just gives me a pre-built tools. And so if it will finish loading the images, here you can see these are default images, but I can swap these out easily. So if I wanted to switch one of these images to something else I have in my image manager, all I got to do is open this up, swap it out. There we go. And then so I can make this highlight whatever I want on my storefront. So if I wanted to say, whatever, if I just want to make this a featured product, right? I won't give it a product a name. There I go. All of a sudden, you can see how quickly I'm able to configure this. We've tried to make it as flexible as possible too. So thinking about SEO. So if for whatever reason I want this to be an H1 on my page, then I have the ability to actually swap out the HTML element right there. Super easy. If I don't want a subheading, all I got to do is uncheck that and it disappears. And really, then we've given you the ability to configure and control every last thing that you see. So sometimes from a design perspective, we'll put things like this on the page, but then we'll have them swap, as you go from one to the next. And so we've given you the ability to just uncheck this and it switches sides. So we're really excited about that. We had someone reach out and they said, I don't like that this overhangs. To them, it looked broken. Our designers kind of like this style. No big deal. Then all I got to do is uncheck this. If my brand doesn't have a gray background, if I wanted something say black, then all I got to do is change the background here. And obviously I need to change the text colors, but we've given you control over everything that you could think of, everything that you can see. So you can change the background color. Let me just change this back to white so it doesn't look as messy. You have control over the font size, the color, the weight. Is it uppercase or just regular case? Even the letter spacing in this case for the subheading, the heading, body text. So we've just tried to give you control over all of these things. And then you can preview it, of course, within Page Builder. And then one of the nice things that we've really tried to do is give you the ability to style the mobile uniquely, as we often have unique needs. So if I was to switch to mobile, you can see here, now I've got a gray background on mobile because that's how it's configured, but I've got a white background on desktop at the moment. So you can really think through all of this uniquely, which is super exciting. So that's kind of a very basic example, but then there's a lot more that we can do with this. So again, the goal is conversions, average order value, marketing, really helping you build out your store in a way that's going to help the business grow. So another good example would be our deal of the day widget, which is, let me just drop this on here. So here I've, in just a moment, dropped a deal of the day on here. And if I want to swap out for whatever product is the deal of the day. So here I've switched this out. So now it's pulling in this basket product. It's counting down to midnight in my local time zone. If I don't like that it says deal of the day, if I wanted to say, I don't know, special of the day, for example, and I have control of that text. And then I can really just configure all of this. And so say I don't want that title to display, no big deal. I'll just hide that and there it's gone. And then for like this countdown timer here, maybe obviously that color is not a standard color for a lot of brands. So no problem. We can go in and we can change the color of that to fit whatever the brand is for that I'm working on right now. I can make this work. This add to cart, it's inheriting the default CTA, but it looks really plain in this case. No problem. Let me just go swap that out. And then maybe I want a bolder add to cart. Now the text is lost. So let me just swap this out and do a different color text. Maybe I want this to be extra bold here. I can do that. And there we go. All I need to do is click publish and it's live on my site in just a couple minutes. And now I've got a tool that creates a sense of urgency on my storefront and highlights a product that maybe I have extra in stock or something like that. And I really want to push this out. And so we've really built a number of tools in here like that. And so let me just show like a couple more that really highlight the power of this. If the next page will load, of course.
Of course.
Fatal mistake to navigate to another page, apparently. Let's see. It looks like it's starting to load. Okay, so now I'm on a product detail page. And so some of the things that we've built are really here to help optimize some of this. So one of the best practices that we've found is to really bring those value props to the forefront for someone that's on a page where they're really making a key decision. And so a lot of times on a page like this, we would like to highlight free shipping. And maybe we want like something like free returns or something like that as well. And so maybe I do that. And then maybe I want something that says, how about made in the USA is a value prop for a lot of stores. And so there, it finally updated. And I misspelled returns. And so we've built this in. And so this still looks kind of plain though. So let me just go and adjust these settings a little bit. So I think maybe, a black background could potentially, or let's just go blue. It's a little easier for right now, can really call this out. And in this case, what we've done is we've tried to make this as easy as possible to use. So you might have your own custom icons for this brand. And so you can actually select to use your own image and upload a different image to any individual one of these. Or we've also included a free set of icons in here. So I think there's a map icon for like made in the USA that I can swap out here. And there we go. All of a sudden I have a whole new feature that really can call attention. Obviously, this design could use a little bit of work still, but I have a whole new feature here on this page. And another one that we can add to the product detail page as well, if I can find it here, is a low stock alert. So oftentimes when your inventory levels run a little bit low, you might want to highlight that again to create this sense of urgency and drive that user towards conversion. And so we built this one in a way where it can be dynamic. It's using GraphQL to see what the actual inventory level is, and then allows you to define either based on the low stock value or a custom value that you've chosen just for this widget. What is the threshold at which it's a low value? You can also just have it be a static message, but that's not as exciting. And then you have control over every piece that you see here. So the colors of all the text that's around this value as well. And you can then quickly add more urgency to the storefront. And let me just show one last example. So if I were to add this to the cart and go to the cart page, this is a place where the user is right. They're in a deep shopping mode. They're in almost ready to buy. But a lot of our customers the goal isn't just to convert. The goal is to increase the average order value to overall increase their revenue with the same amount of traffic and the same amount of buyers. And so we might want to add something else here, like an upsell type tool. So somewhere, forgive this long list that I have at the moment, as I have some test widgets on here as well. Let's see. Here we go, cart cross sell. So just throw this one on the page. And this gives me another way to just highlight another product. Again, I have control over what product is going to show up. And so maybe I want that same basket that we saw earlier. I can add that product in, and it's going to pull in its product image, the price, all the details that are necessary. And then I can design and control this exactly as needed. We have other widgets that are coming that are more exciting too, where maybe you have a threshold for the weight of the cart in order to get free shipping. And so we can, it'll look at, well, what is that weight? It'll do the math for you. It'll look up everything that's in the cart and find that. And something that might take weeks or months to build, but could be really valuable for a particular merchant is available to be added to your store within just a couple minutes. So that's just a taste of some of what's there. Some of the other widgets are things like complementary products, which is something that you see on Amazon and mobile nowadays, where you see like it goes well with kind of experience in a different way than this, but where often you see it with apparel. So maybe it's a pair of pants, but then you see that it goes well with this shirt and that belt and those shoes. And so you can quickly select all your products, add them in, push it to the store. Or something that can actually it sounds easy, but it can be a hassle, is things like featured blog posts. Maybe I want to create more engagement or awareness with featured blog posts. Well, it's actually not that easy to add into your store, especially anywhere across your site. And so we have a featured blog post one that we can add in, and you select what tag is associated with those featured blog posts. And then it's immediately ready and available to go, and you can configure everything else that you might want to there. So this whole suite of tools to do it. And if I want this to go live on my site, literally all I need to do is click publish here, and in a moment's notice, maybe with the internet here, it'll be a couple moments notice. It'll be live on my site and ready to go. And now shoppers can engage with this. So even as a developer that loves to spend the time in the code, tools like this are incredibly valuable for us in our agency, for our clients, for other merchants out there to really monetize their store. And I think it's going to make a big difference in the entire ecosystem and be really valuable for many hundreds and thousands of stores on BigCommerce. And all of this is birthed out of this hackathon that, for a project that I may or may not have gotten to were it not for the initiative of this team and this opportunity to kind of push me into exploring this. And then once we saw the traction, not just from winning the hackathon, but from all the comments that came back to me after from merchants, from BigCommerce salespeople, from others at agencies, other developers, where they were like, this seems really valuable. When can we get this? That validation was then, the hackathon was the impetus for all of this and the opportunity to do it. The validation that came after it was the what we needed to then invest the time and energy to flesh this out fully, go through everything to create the brand, a logo, a website, support documentation, do all the things, and go through the launch. So I'm really grateful to you and to the team for putting on that hackathon and for all of the encouragement along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're so grateful that you were able for all the hard work that you put in and everything. And I mean, I think I can't really think of a better closing way to. We just came full circle with the whole title of this talk. Is there anything else you want to say for a closing remark?
Maybe two things. One, if you're interested, go check out atomicwidgets.com. Quick shameless plug for it. I really think that it makes sense, even if you're a developer, an agency, or a merchant that's kind of trying to do it all on your own. I think it makes sense, regardless of who you are, just to give you those tools at your disposal. But that aside, I think that you are capable of more than you possibly think you are. And so taking the opportunities to explore things like this and just test the waters and see how far you can push, especially within this community at BigCommerce of developers that are very encouraging and helpful to one another. It's a safe place to test and see what you can do and push the limits. And it's a great opportunity to then grow your skills as a developer. Whether you actually publish whatever you're doing or not is secondary. Just exploring, testing, taking on new things, getting support from a community, and especially finding the encouragement where so many developers are maybe afraid to take on something new or have that imposter syndrome of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And I think this is a great space to be able to explore things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I 100% agree. For anyone that's thinking about participating in a hackathon or just dipping their toes in the water, I can't imagine, a better community. When I started with the BigCommerce platform, better community involved with. Scott, I got to say thank you so much for taking the time and going over your wonderful build, and I'm looking so forward to see what you come up with next.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking the time and inviting me into this.
Awesome. Thanks so much.